episode number 10 of Sports Consiglieres podcast. My name is Jim Whalen. Along with me is my friend, my cohort, my consigliere, the voice of Woodridge football, the head coach for the girls soccer team in Woodridge, 10 years in the running. My friend, Jerry Calla. Jerry, how you doing?
Good, Jimmy. Great to be with you. It seems like it's been forever since we've been on the air, so
Yeah,
we got a lot to discuss. So
it's deja vu all over again. I bought my purple LSU shirt. I was down in New Orleans for the Malik Neighbors draft. So we talked off camera, talked about the 100th anniversary of the New York Giants. We figured that might be something the listeners might be looking for. They're doing it every Tuesday. They have the list is of the committee is Bob Papa, who's the chair, Pete Arbentanta, Ernie Accorsi, Judy Batista, John Birdie, Linda Cohn, Vinny DiTerani, Bob Glaber, Joe Harrigan, Jay Horowitz, who I had on the show, Peter King from Sports Illustrated, Gary Myers. We all know Paul Schwartz and George Willis, I think. So every Tuesday they drop the names. So we talked off camera, starting with number 100, Rich Seibert. He's now a high school coach over by me, I think, in Warren Hills. Brad Benson, who owns the car dealerships. And Hakeem Nicks. What do you think about Hakeem Nicks, Jerry?
Well, Jimmy, I think first, you talked about that committee. There's some heavyweights on that committee. Paul Schwartz is still the beat writer. You got Ernie Accorsi, who is a GM. You got Linda Cohn, who's the, who's a darling at ESPN. Again, lists are great. They cause debates, which is good for fans, good for pundits like ourselves. Hakeem Nicks, I think, should be a little bit higher. Now, the question is, if you ask me how much higher, I don't know. 2011, he took over the postseason, was drafted not probably, but that was one of those drafts where you just knew the Giants were taking him out of NC, that particular year. And like I said, I mean, he just ran wild in the 2011 postseason, which ultimately culminated in them winning the Super Bowl. So, again, doesn't have the longevity. However, probably should be higher some point on this list. You get into the whole thing of who's really a Giant. They got Barkley 2 in front of, Hakeem Nicks.
Yeah, I think he would have been higher if he stayed, if he signed this year. Obviously, fresh off the signing with Philly, he probably dropped down on the list. Definitely, we'll see how that goes. If it was a right move or not. I know we talked off camera about the Hardknocks episode that was kind of surrounding it with their what they're going to do. You need an offensive line. I mean, they decided not to go with a quarterback, and Barkley signed with Philly. So see where it goes with that. So
yeah, but Jimmy, what makes me crazy is. And you brought up the Hardknocks, which I really have enjoyed watching all of them. Obviously, a new one drops tonight. But again, all we have heard around the NFL for many, many years from many different people, in the media, GMs, ex-GMs, owners, coaches, is that you do not lock up a running back for big money long term. Now, all of a sudden, Joe Schoen doesn't do that. And now, apparently, in some circles, that's a problem. So I don't know what has changed, because if Joe Schoen and this regime did lock up Barkley, it would be a problem. So, again, I have no problem. I think one thing in one of the episodes, what got kind of, I don't want to say unnoticed or maybe looked over is the better term, is that the conversations with Barkley's agent, as everybody was like, and even with Barkley, everybody was like, well, the Giants, they kind of moved on. You have to remember the historical context here is they started negotiating with him, last year before the season ended, 2 years ago, I should say, and then they franchised him. I think not franchising him again, I think, that was the right move. And I think B, based on his age and production, the market didn't dictate what he should get, and Philly is in a much different spot. There's always somebody that's willing to overpay. Sirianni is coaching for his job.
Absolutely.
I'm not in, they have a new coordinator everywhere. It seems like they have a new coaching staff in every room. So again, he's playing for his job. Philly is telling you they're all in.
Yeah.
Again,
well, even the GM, I think, is playing for his job too. Because
I agree. The whole regime in Philly is coaching. They have exhausted their options. You're a head coach, a GM. What goes? You start firing, assistant coaches, and you start shaking up the staff. They have done that. Their back is against the wall. They had to sign Barkley, to really. I mean, that offense, if everyone's healthy, is going to be scary. But getting back to the Giants and Shane, I just don't think that the criticism is warranted. That they, it's a business deal. These things don't end well. Giant fans were mad. We could get into a whole nother show now. You look what Brunson did for the Knicks. Did Barkley truly want to be, a Giant for the rest of his life, a Giant for life? He talked about the Ring of Honor. Again, some people are going to tell you ultimately he's a union employee. He was examining his collective bargaining rights. And he was looking to get the best deal. Not everybody is going to do. I mean, especially now what Jalen Brunson did for the Knicks, to leave that money. But Jalen Brunson is telling you he wants to be a Knick and he wants to be a champion in New York City for the Knickerbockers. Again, there was some conversations. You don't hear with Shane and Ed Barry, Barkley's agent in Hardknocks. You don't hear the whole context of the conversation. You're hearing snippets or whatever. It didn't seem like there wasn't really enthusiasm, but I think the same could be said. Shane was holding the line. He said the market's going to set itself. Ed Barry didn't seem too thrilled, for Barkley to come back to the Giants. So I don't have a problem with the move. I don't.
I don't. As much as I like Barkley and like what type of character player he was. I mean, unfortunately, things come to an end.
Yeah.
And they invested in Jones. They didn't get the 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks, so I don't think they were happy. They wanted to get a weapon. They got Neighbors, and they built the line. So I think that's where they are. But just turning back to the list again, 93 Terry Kennard,
super guy,
Clemson. Corey Webster out of LSU, 87. What do you think about that?
Well, you just want to talk about your discounted shirt, so that's why
exactly.
You brought up Corey Webster.
Shirt.
But again, Webster, solid player. I think he's appropriately ranked, on this list. Solid player, for very good Giant teams. And, Webster came along. That was another position that the Giants were kind of in flux. When he came along was the secondary.
Yeah.
So I think he's appropriately ranked. I also like Lawrence Tynes at 91. Kicked him to 2 Super Bowls, was money in the postseason. Overall, I mean, a good player.
Overlooked.
A Giant.
It was overlooked. He was so good. He was overlooked.
Yeah.
He was that steady. He talked Bradshaw at 84. Ran hard. Earth, Wind, and Fire. You mentioned that before we had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, him, Derek Ward, and Brandon Jacobs.
And Dave Megan, we talked about. I guess he's in prison. I know that when they drafted him, Bill Parcells was like, "Do I really need another?" I give it was 5'7", 5'8". At the time, they had Joe Morris on there, so but they used him as a scat back. And then, what's your take on Megan at 85? You think the prison term hurt him?
No, I don't. I don't think it hurt him. I mean, again, he came out. Like I said, what I remember with him is I remember really Dan Reeves. Really, that first year with Dan Reeves, Meggett really getting a lot of touches. The Giants never really had a player like Meggett, you have to remember, when he came in, everybody thought the future was going to be a player like, Eric Metcalf, a guy that came out of the backfield, caught the ball, could run the ball, and return the ball. And Meggett did that. I mean, he was exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Parcells loved him. Parcells brought him, to New England. Again, I think he's appropriately ranked. I think Bradshaw is appropriately ranked. I think, Terry Kennard is appropriately ranked. I think Terry Kennard, I actually met him one time, and he said something that really hit home. He said he wonders what his career would have been as far as getting fanfare if he didn't play in the same era as Ronnie Lott, because he always felt that, when he was always compared to Ronnie Lott, and obviously there was only one Ronnie Lott. But again, now you're getting into a spot here. We talked about Webster at 87, Meggett at 85, Bradshaw 84. Now we're getting up higher on the list to 83.
83.
And anybody that knows me knows that this is a sore point with me.
So go ahead. You got the floor. What do you think on Kerry Collins at 83?
I think Collins should be higher. From somebody that used to go to champs every year, let's see. I had a Dave Brown jersey. I had a Danny Cannell jersey. I wasn't that desperate to buy a Tommy Maddox jersey.
Or Kent Graham.
Kent Graham, the pride of Ohio State. Correct. Good one, Kent Graham.
Scott Bruner, Delaware.
Well, that's we're going out of the era now. But
those
guys,
all right.
Those guys that we just mentioned, Collins came in, and the one thing about the Giants, Collins was signed basically for nothing because he was coming off some personal problems. The DWI arrest, he got cut from Carolina, questions about his character in the locker room, goes to the Saints, does nothing, gets in trouble, DWI there. The Giants sign him. There's mass hysteria. Oh, this guy has a lot of personal problems. He's never going to survive in New York. And boy, did he really have a good career. And boy, did he make things exciting for New York Giants offensively. You look at Shockey, Barber, Ike Hilliard, Amani Toomer. I mean, Ron Dixon to a certain degree.
Yeah.
They had Greg Camella. I mean, those teams could go vertical. Those teams moved the ball down the field. Those Jim Fossil years with Collins, the Giants were potent offensively. It breaks my heart that he played bad in the Super Bowl against the Ravens, but it breaks my heart the disaster in San Francisco, because people forget this was the 38-14, Strahan points to the scoreboard with T.O., the Giants fall apart. That year, going into the playoffs, I'll never forget this. I'm watching this. John Madden, I could see it like it's yesterday. He was like, the Giants are the one team that I don't want to play. They were rolling with a capital R offensively. And again, Collins' career statistically was good. He had a god-awful Super Bowl. He admits that. He doesn't hide from that.
I would say, Baltimore, I just watched that 30 for 30. He was on the other day with Tony Siragusa, which is amazing to me that, he passed away a month after that was shot. But like that team, defensively, that was a tough, Ray Lewis was playing on another level. He had that court case, where he got caught up in that whole thing in Atlanta where he had the murder charge. And I think he used that as motivation. And that team had a lot of swagger. Trent Dilfer as the quarterback, but they defensively, they were a tough team. And I forget the running back, Jamal Lewis. So I mean that was a tough team to face. In fact, defensively. So they didn't show up. And with Kerry Collins, I mean, both you and I don't really tip our hands what we do for a living, but I was working down at the Trade Center, and Kerry Collins came down with a bunch of Giants. After the 9/11 happened, the Trade Center, he came down there, met him, and I remember one of the firemen. He goes, "What do you think, Jerry? Going back? I mean, what do you think, Kerry, going back to the Super Bowl?" He goes, "Yep." He goes, "I would love to." So very personable, but just goes to show you how he embraced New York and really wanted to be part of the community, going down there. Like I remember Sam Garms and a bunch of them came down there. So, but anyway,
Also now too, I mean, you'd be remiss without talking about this, is he played, okay, so I mean, again, you're talking about he's third among Giant quarterbacks in completions, fourth in yards, sixth in touchdown passes. And
Yeah.
again, on a personal level, there's not a game that I enjoyed as much as the 41-0 thrashing over the Vikings in that postseason. That was, as a Giant fan, you're like, wow, offensive explosion. The defense took care of a high-powered, Chris Carter wanted no part of the field that day. Culpepper, again, Collins at 83, that's an issue for me.
Yeah.
Hostetler at 79. Okay, again, I love Jeff. I really do love Jeff Hostetler. I actually, at one point, used to rock a Hostetler West Virginia jersey. Again, he took over what many felt was Phil Simms' team in a very difficult position. Basically gave the offense that year, the 90 team, another dimension with his legs. And again, he played well against the Bears in the playoffs. He played on one leg in a lot of pain against the 49ers, which really Matt Barr was the biggest weapon that day. But again, I just think
player. He's a tough player. I mean,
played great in Buffalo.
I was in the stadium that 35-3 when they played Chicago, and that was a great game. I mean, a lot of emotion. You talk about the old Giant Stadium, and Phil Simms, he had the team at 11-0. And then I forget, he broke his leg, broke his arm, but he had a season-ending injury. And Hostetler came in, like I said, came in a different dimension. West Virginia quarterback. And everybody remembers that one play when Bruce Smith had his arm in the end zone and he pulled it away. That could have been changed, but
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. He gave them another dimension, and again, probably, I think, and we're getting a little bit off topic here, but I think that's the reason after that Super Bowl why Parcells left the Giants, because I don't think he wanted to touch that quarterback controversy in with a 100-foot pole there. I mean, again, I just think as far as the list goes, I don't want to get off topic here, but I just think that
even with Parcells, he goes, after a while they heard your stories. They all heard your stories. So
I just think that Collins should be higher.
Well,
than Hostetler. That's my thing.
William Roberts at 80 and Pepper Johnson at 75. Both went to Ohio State. Pepper Johnson, to me, he was kind of like a staple, middle linebacker, Thomas Pepper Johnson. What do you think about him at 75? Right or
wrong? Again, now you're getting into my number 2 on what I have a problem with this list. So just to be clear for anyone listening, the Giants have players 100 through 49, I believe, already ranked. Okay, and I'm sorry, 51. It's 51 through 100. Pepper Johnson in that spot, I think he could be higher. Jack Gregory is right in front of Pepper Johnson. Jack Gregory, John Mendenhall, who is on this list. Those guys probably should be in the Ring of Honor. Those guys played in the wilderness years, as they're called. The early 70s, the early Meadowlands years in 76. But I think Pepper Johnson should be higher. Was Pepper Johnson a better Giant, a bigger Giant than Antonio Pierce, who's 71? You could make that argument. Antonio Pierce was very popular, won a Super Bowl. But now we go up to Brian Kelly.
Yeah. Well,
Brian Kelly at 67.
67. Listen, he was part of that original linebacking crew with Taylor, Carson, and Gary Reasons. So I think that he was right before that crew. So, I mean, I don't know. I think he's ranked a little bit high. I think Pepper Johnson had a little better career than Brian Kelly. What do you think about that, Jerry?
So when I first looked at that, Brian Kelly did jump off at me. Now, I remember as a kid first getting into the Giants, prior to Phil Simms becoming my favorite player, Brian Kelly, Brad Van Pelt, and Harry Carson were my favorite players. Those three really played on god-awful teams. We talked about those three players with Jennings. That was pretty much the Giants, probably the best 4 players.
Yeah. And Rob Carpenter was a running back. Yeah.
Well, he came Rob Carpenter wasn't there till 81. He
Okay.
came a little later of the time. I'm referencing those mid to late 70s. Rob Carpenter came in the same year as Taylor, but those four were the best players. Offensively, you had Ron Johnson, but then again, you had after that, you had like Larry Zonker, and that's a whole nother story. Doug Coder. Anyway, Brian Kelly, I think, is there, right, wrong, or indifferent, because he does have the longevity. Great story. I believe he was a 14th round pick. They don't even have that anymore. I think he's there for the longevity. When I first saw that, I was like, Pepper Johnson, in my opinion, should be higher. But again, Kelly does have the longevity, and he does have the stats. So you could probably. I'm more worked up about the Kerry Collins spot. So we go further up. Now here's the thing, and I love the guy to death. Didn't really have the longevity with the Giants, but Jim Bird at 64. Coincidentally, that's the number he wore. I mean, right off the bat, I think Brian Kelly. I think Pepper Johnson. I think Keith Hamilton, Antonio Pierce should be higher than Jim Bird. Pepper Johnson, even Gary Reasons. Burt was solid. Took a lot of flack from Parcells. A really good run stopper. Really put Montana on his back in the '86 NFC Championship game. I think Burt's a little high at 64. Then we go up. We got Pierre Paul at 61. Again, he was an absolute beast. Unfortunately, I think we remember him for the firecracker.
Yeah.
Fireworks, whatever you want to call incident. I don't have a problem with Pierre Paul there. Jumbo Elliott at 60. Solid player. I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I would say he might be a little bit higher. I mean, one of my favorite Jumbo Elliott things was, I guess, watching the games back then. Parcells went up to Phil Simms. I guess he was making his first start, and Elliott was the left tackle, and Phil Simms, he goes, "Oh, you're all right?" And I guess Elliott threw up on him. And I remember John Madden referencing that. He goes, "That's our 335-pound guy. It says he's okay. He throws up on you." So, I mean, he was so nervous at that. But, I mean, that was like, that was our youth. But I remember Jumbo Elliott. I wouldn't say that the Jumbo Elliott's face is probably pounding into the pavement. But, that.
Again, I don't, Jimmy, I don't disagree with you on that either. I think you could, Elliott, when we see the complete list, Elliott could definitely be a top 50 Giant. And he's not too far from that as well.
Yeah, he's in striking. Victor Cruz, 59.
Victor Cruz, 59. Again, I don't have an issue with that. I think some people are going to probably say he should be higher, but let me preface this. Great story, still involved with the organization, played in 70 games. So I think with his stats, his tenure, you take away the dancing and everything else. I think he's ranked where he should be.
Yeah.
Mark
Collins, 56. I mean, he was another part of that secondary team. I remember being in the club in Morristown way back when we were playing Philly and standing next to him. So, very personable guy in the club. He was injured. He wasn't going down to Philly, but
I'm glad that you were hanging out with him in a club. That's good. I'm sure there might be more to that story, but we'll leave it there.
Well, I was there with my friends, and they're like, "Hey, you're Mark Collins." Yeah, this is personal. But I think with football players, sometimes I'm surprised that you recognize them because they're always wearing a helmet.
True. One thing I'll say about Mark Collins, and I'll give him this, is unfortunately we have the Flipper Anderson game, where he got smoked in overtime. Flipper Anderson just continued running through the tunnel. Mark Collins, little known fact, was actually very hurt, where I don't know if his leg was broken, but he was where he couldn't run. He was far from 100%. I know everybody's going to say there's injuries, but to his credit, after the game, he owned up to getting burnt by Flipper Anderson. Didn't talk about the injury to many, many years later down the road. And he was asked, "How come you didn't make this known then?" And he said he didn't want to take away from what Flipper Anderson did. And, I thought that was a class move, especially nowadays. Everybody would be running and hiding behind the injury.
Right. Dave Deal, 52. I think that's a right spot. I mean, Deal. Now I think he's at University of Memphis now. I think he's the offensive line coach at University of Memphis.
Yes, he's back. He's in the coaching ranks, and he was on. Involved with the Giants Access Blue and a few of their media platforms. But
and he had the tattoo of Chief Illinois from Illinois on his arm. Otis Anderson, 51, spent a lot of his career in Cardinals, but I think he's known for being a Giant, obviously Super Bowl MVP. 51. I would say he might have been a little bit higher, just for the.
I agree with that, and then you could go down to, Otis Anderson. People I think they forget is he came in '86 with the Giants mid-season in a trade, which is funny because a lot back then that very rarely happened in the NFL. They wanted a little depth, and long story short, he was on the team in '86. Got a few touches, a few carries here and there, but he kind of really disappeared, for basically until 1990. And if it wasn't for an injury, I mean, he would be known as a Cardinal. But I don't disagree with you at all, Jimmy. I think 51 is high. You go down, you start getting at running backs. Brandon Jacobs at 69.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Brandon Jacobs, 8 years, 2 Super Bowls. He's 4th in franchise history in rushing, 5th in rushing attempts. Probably can make the argument they should be flip-flopped.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're looking at stats-wise, yeah. I mean, Brandon Jacobs had a heck of a career.
He was a beast, an absolute beast. And
yeah.
One other thing I want to mention why we have this list up. So we just covered 51 through 100. We touched upon that. But Dave Jennings at 53, I think only the New York Giants, top 53 players, one of them would be a punter. And I'm going to assume that Sean Landeta is going to be in this list at some point. I'm going to assume. Maybe it's me.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that. But again, what we had is in those bad years is we survived where we had any hope, which was Dave Jennings pinning the opponent down.
Yeah.
So the Giants' best weapon, which was their defense for many of his years in his career. He was very, very solid. He was normally in those years one of the few Pro Bowlers every year. Finished his career with the Jets. And, fun fact, he dated Michelle Marsh of CBS News.
Yeah. Thanks for remembering that. It was out of, I think he was out of St. Lawrence College up in upstate New York.
And he was a media guy for the Giants. He was on the air.
All right. Well, I pulled up some names on the Ring of Honor. Charlie Connolly. Where do you think he's going to fall?
He's going to be high.
48 to 61. Tuffy Lemons.
Yeah, these guys are going to be high. I mean, that's going to be another good show that we're going to have when we talk about, the top 50 players. I mean, Charlie Connolly was solid.
Yeah. So
I mean, again, you look at this list. I think trying to correlate what this list does for me is this list really invoked a lot of good memories, a lot of good things, and ultimately it accentuates the fact that from 51 to 100, there is a lot of offensive linemen on this list, which is the current state of affairs, which is the issue the Giants have been having, far too long. And hopefully, things change very, very quickly. So I think that's to really kind of end this list, if you will, or discussing this list. That's what I take out of it. Yes, all good memories of a lot of players when you were a kid, but you look at it 51 through 100, a lot of offensive linemen. Those guys were champions. That accentuates the current situation with the Giants.
And we talked about this too. Like John Madden said, in his draft, who are you going to draft? Offensive lineman. Who are you going to draft next year? Offensive lineman. And
right.
You can't control the line of scrimmage. You can't control the game. It doesn't matter if you run the ball, you pass the ball. You can't control the line of scrimmage. You're done for. But let me give you a name. A couple names. Kenny Hill, who was a safety. You think he's going to be on there?
I don't think so.
All right.
He wasn't better than Terry Kennard. Kenny Hill, again, I love Kenny Hill. People forget he came over. He was actually on the 80 Raiders Super Bowl team when they beat the Eagles. Came over, was a good vet. He's not on this list. He is. Let me tell you, if he's on this list higher than Terry Kennard, I might have to go visit Bob Papa in person. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Terry Kennard.
What do you think about Ed Ross? The
Aaron Ross?
Aaron Ross. I mean, he was safety from first round draft pick. You know, kind of unsung. You know, he
I don't see he's on. I would be surprised if he's higher. I would be surprised if he's higher than Webster.
Okay. Who do you think? Who do you would say going from 50 to 1? Who do you think you would be surprised that's not on that list?
I mean, I would have to see that list. I mean, I don't think. I mean, again, you're not going to see Kenny Hill. I'd be shocked if you see Aaron Ross. I mean, Aaron Ross. I think. Again, he's more known for being the spouse of Sonia Richards, who's a U.S. Olympic track star.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, because of the personality and the way he left, or I think he's coming back better in the court of public opinion, as he should be. Tiki Barber is going to be very high. All-time leading rusher. It's going to be very high. And I think some people are going to have an issue how high he is. Obviously, Manning is going to be high. Sims is going to be high. Charlie Connolly is going to be high. I got to see the list to see if I don't think there's going to be anyone admitted going forward where you're going to say that person should have been in the top 50.
What about Charlie Way? One way, he's still with the team now.
He doesn't make the list.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
if Charles Way is in the top 50 over Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw, I'm going to replace Bob Papa.
Yeah, good point. So Chris Snee, he's probably going to be
absolutely.
Absolutely. You got O.C. Umenyiora.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Carl Banks, Brad Van Pelt, Mark Bavaro. These are just some names on their Ring of Honor. Alex Webster.
Sure.
So
I look forward to, because I think now, you're rattling off players in the Ring of Honor, and now I think, somebody like Carl Banks, to me, that's another guy, again, I think should be in the Hall of Fame. Mike, I think this 50 through 1, we're gonna have a debate of not somebody being on the list, but I think I'm curious to see how high a guy like Carl Banks is, a guy like Bavaro, how high they are.
Yeah. What about Shockey? Think he makes the list?
I think Shockey should be on the list.
Yeah. Where did he fall?
I would hope that Shockey is on the list because Howard Cross is on the list.
Yeah. Yeah. But Howard Cross, I think longevity. I mean, Shockey was, he captured the team for
again, the Giants never had anything like that. It was unbelievable to watch.
Yeah.
Again, tying this up into tonight, we talked about the Giants list here, the top 100 players. It's the 100-year anniversary. They're wearing, special jerseys. There's a lot going on. And now they're on, we're taking this to another episode of Hard Knocks tonight. So it'll be interesting, to see what tonight's episode brings. I think it's been a great look for them. The Giants are usually very reserved in these things. I mean, I think as a fan, particularly a Giant fan, it's cool to see, the scouting aspect of it, these conversations, and, it's been interesting.
Well, one thing I will say, to me, like we talked about the draft and how it became an event, it's amazing for me to see the amount of personnel that each team has.
True.
Is to evaluate the talent and interviewing the talent. I mean, and I really like Daboll's. I really like Daboll as a coach. Obviously you see him on the sidelines after the games, but he's a football guy. And then I didn't realize his pedigree going with Alabama and who he worked with Josh Allen. Yeah, I like him, and I think even if he has a bad year, I think he'd still be back. I would even say with Joe Shane too. I mean, I like what the team is doing, but it remains to be seen what happens. So I mean,
Yeah,
listen,
I don't. Again, I don't disagree with that. I think there's adults in the building. I like the way they collaborate. Assistant General Manager Brendan Brown, excuse me. I thought was excellent as well. They got him from the Eagles. I mean, like you said, it's very interesting to see all the moving parts. And the one thing that I'll say about Hard Knocks is what I find funny, and it goes to show you about John Mara. Here's the guy who owns the team, and yet he still finds it necessary to knock on the door before he enters somebody's office. So I don't think if you're working for the Cowboys, I don't think Jerry Jones is knocking.
yeah,
But I mean,
true.
again, it's been listen.
That's not a knock on our our producer Dave Sturgio. So it's not a knock.
I know. Listen, I know Dave is locked into this episode. He told me beforehand.
Well, he had it because of all the technical difficulties I had.
Well, that's a whole nother story. You're airing out your dirty laundry now.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, getting back to this, like I said, as a fan, it's been cool to see because you don't really get that from the Giants. Excuse me. And again, Shane, they have a plan. They didn't spend the money on a running back. They brought some pieces in.
Yeah, I mean they had a relationship with Motor Singletary.
Correct.
So I mean $5 million was saving a lot of cap room. So and so we'll see. I mean I'm always excited at this year. I hope they don't go to 18 games. I think that might be too much. We talked a little bit about that before, but
I think it's coming.
You think it's coming?
I think it's coming.
I'd rather see more playoff games. I'd rather see games with a purpose than games where people are mailing it in week 17 and 18. I think Joe Burrow said he'd like to have a second bye in there. So now you're probably going from late February to late August, early February. But anyway. Jerry,
well, I mean, again, this is what the NFL wanted. They wanted to make this a 12-month thing, and they've certainly done that. And again, I always say this: there is nothing like the NFL. There is nothing like the NFL. There is. But again, Jimmy, it was good to be back on the air.
Yeah, and listen, Jerry, and listen, 10 episodes in, I mean, the relationship has been really, really great. Doing this, did the last episode by myself. I like the chemistry we have together, and it's been really the 10 episodes deep. I'm really looking forward to the next episode coming again real soon. But to close it down,
do I get a raise now?
You get a raise, yeah. So of course you get a raise. So
Jimmy, before we sign off, I want to say one thing. We have to give a quick shout out to our number one fan, our ex-coworker Pat Monahan, who is looking forward to this episode. I don't know if he watches because he's interested in the episode or he just likes to criticize me. Or maybe it's both.
Yeah, but, probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. But anyway, we appreciate Pat's support. And again, it was great to talk about the Giants. We'll cover the first 50 players when those players are announced. Our next episode is going to be 2 days from now. We have an exciting guest, so stay tuned to our Instagram account for that guest. And at some point we will be talking about the Jets as well. So,
yeah,
Jimmy, I'll leave it to you to sign off.
All right, this is episode number 10 of Sports Consiglieres. Thanks for Dave Sturgio to producing this episode and his support. Also, congratulations to Dave. He had a successful event back at the Tiki Bar over a couple weeks back, and also I guess he's planning another event in Staten Island. If you're interested in podcasting, film, he's got his own studio. Follow his Instagram at Chop Sports Media. He's also got the fan, my fandom app. He's got a lot of exciting stuff going on. Big help for the show. So I want to thanks for Dave and his success. A lot of good things coming at Chop Sports Media. Also, Jerry, thanks for your time, and really looking forward to the next episode. And this is episode number 10. Sign off. Thank you, Jerry, for the time. Thank you all for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Please contact us through social media if you have any show ideas or if you like or don't like anything we're doing. This is Jim Whalen, and this is for Jerry Calla, signing off, episode number 10. Thanks, Jerry.
Take care, Jimmy. Thank you.
All right.